This time I'm going to talk about the Virgin Guadalupe, which is very important in Hispanic America. And next time, which will be 4 weeks from now, I'll be talking about the Christian nation myth. So, so for today, we have this rather big and very important myth in the Catholic Church, especially in the Americas, of the Virgin Guadalupe, which relates to an apparition that occurred. And the story goes that on December 9th in 1531, quite a while back, near Mexico City, a devout Catholic peasant by the Christian name of Juan Diego first saw the first of 4 apparitions. And it was this woman, this young woman, who appeared to him in this apparition and wanted to have a temple built to her on that site. And he went to the bishop and was telling the bishop about this, and the bishop didn't believe him and asked for more proof. Juan Diego went back to the site and saw other apparitions. The important one is that this woman who sort of claimed to be, which is basically identified with the Virgin Mary, created a miracle for him, and that was she made, in the middle of winter, she made these Spanish roses, because Castilian roses grow magically, and it was the dead of winter, so those couldn't have been there. And so, and she told him to gather those up and take them to the bishop to show, and he did that. And in his cloak, his tilma is called. And when he dropped these roses, when he showed these roses to the bishop, I have a little picture of it here. You've probably seen this sort of image. When he showed this image, he showed the roses to the bishop, there was this miraculous image that appeared on his cloak, on his tilma, that was effectively painted by these roses. And this image was of the Guadalupe, who actually was the source of the apparition. So, and surely you've seen this sort of thing if you've been paid any attention in a Mexican food restaurant or in the votive candle section of the supermarket. You've seen this sort of thing. And okay, so this is almost sort of like a notion of a photographic image that's appeared there, and this image is of a lone, supposedly dark-skinned woman who is treading on a snake. There's a half moon there, and underneath there's actually a little angel underneath supporting the whole thing. So, and it turns out this cloak is a real artifact. It actually exists, and this is the image from the cloak, or the tilma. And it's a little cockeyed, isn't it? It's a little better. Anyway, this trying very hard to get it dialed in. So this image this cloak actually exists. It's at a basilica of the Virgin Guadalupe in Mexico City, or near Mexico City. And you can actually go and see it to this very day. And this basilica, as it turns out, is probably I think it's the second most visited shrine in all of the Catholic world. And here's a picture of the basilica. This is the old and the new. The old is on the left. And what's kind of interesting about that building is it actually leans off to one side, because the conquistadors, when they came to conquer Spain, they filled in a lake there and built a building on top of it, so the foundation's sinking. So they actually created another basilica. This is the new one over on this side. So so this is a very important image, a very important apparition that occurred. And by 7 years after the time this apparition became visible, the 8 million natives of the Aztecs converted, at least nominally, to Catholicism. So this is actually a very important turning point in the spread of Catholicism to the New World. I can't emphasize that enough, and it's a very important part of the culture of Mexico and most of the South American countries, or the Latin American countries in this continent. So it's still a sensation today. It's the most popular graven image in Mexico. There's annual festivals for this. The basilica is kind of interesting. I've actually been there in person, and this tilma is mounted way up on the ceiling, way up high, or not near the ceiling, let's put it that way, is way up high, and they've added a moving floor in the new basilica, a moving escalator to keep people moving around. So
now, I am interested really quickly. I don't know if you were getting to this in a couple of minutes, but you said there were 4 different apparitions.
Yeah, well, we're going to focus mostly on the cloak, which is kind of the main one. The rest of them are kind of more. There's not direct evidence for that. So.
Okay.
So I'm not even going to emphasize those too much. But this cloak is something that there's a tangible thing, right? So so it's worth kind of focusing on that and deciding whether there's really a miracle there.
Okay.
So so I was talking about the basilica and this thing there, and the moving floors are kind of interesting. So if you're a skeptic and you go there, it's a tough thing because you get whizzed along and you can't see very much, and then you're out of there, you know. Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. So, I thought it was amusing. One of the little blurbs about the basilica said, "The faithful can look up the picture from a moving mat that slides in 2 directions, so that devotees will not remain in ecstasy contemplating their beloved Virgin." So this is a feature, not a not a bug.
Feature, not a bug.
Okay, so. But when we pull back a little bit and pull away from the myth or the stated myth and such, and look at the context in which it happened, things start looking a little more suspect. Clearly, this apparition benefited the Catholic Church and the spread of Catholicism throughout the New World. It was also instrumental in the Spanish conquest of Mexico, and we'll talk about that in more detail. Juan Diego is become kind of a symbol of simple yet passionate faith in his conversion to Catholicism. And since he was an Aztec who converted, he's almost kind of like this Uncle Tom symbol in the United States, where Uncle Tom kind of is okay with the slavery, but is like in the Juan Diego is kind of okay with the Spaniards coming and taking over their country. Juan Diego has become a religious figure in himself. He was canonized in July of 2002, and he's Latin America's first indigenous saint. Now, we'll talk more about Juan Diego in a little bit. Nobody's quite sure he actually existed, unfortunately. So, okay, so let's pull back and take a look at some of this. And first off, the image that we see in the tilma is actually based on earlier art, it turns out. So you can take a look at this from an art history perspective and a historical perspective and say and trace this from earlier things. So this image is based on a banner that was brought with the conquistador Cortez from another shrine to Guadalupe in Spain that was established about 2 centuries earlier. Okay, so Guadalupe isn't a name that the Aztecs gave him. This was a name that was brought over from Spain, and actually that name actually has some Spanish and Moorish influence from the Moors were there in Spain prior. Anyway, so it turns out that there's another Guadalupe that was discovered, if you will. Here's a picture, and this is of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and this was discovered by a cowherder in Spain around 1326, and this is kind of a subject of a lot of mythology as well. There is this statue, and it's a mother and child, and they've dressed it up so you can't see very much. You can only see the face here, a hand, the scepter's been added, and then there's the face of the child, and it's
almost Muslim.
Yes. There is that sort of idea that this has a Muslim influence, and it's a mother and child, and it may or may not have been religious. It may have just been some art that was dumped and discovered, or there's all sorts of stories.
Not that they don't want it. So.
Yeah, there's all sorts of stories about this, but the fact that they're dark-skinned is actually fairly important in all this. Okay, so as it turns out, both both Christopher Columbus and Cortez were very much influenced by this earlier Guadalupe and the story, and then the stories around that. So, which is another level of the myth and such. But that's I'm going to kind of downplay for this presentation. So, Christopher Columbus was actually very fond of Guadalupe, and so was Isabella and Ferdinand, the King and Queen of Spain, and they kind of this mutual love of this appearance of Mary, of which there are many, by the way, was kind of, I think, a driving force, or was helpful in him getting money to go and take his ships over, to discover America. When he landed, he named the first place he landed Guadalupe, and he named the first native woman he met Guadalupe, and he actually brought back a bunch of natives to be converted to Christianity at this site in Spain. Okay, so there's a strong connection there. For Cortez, who was the conquistador who came and conquered the Aztecs, he actually grew up in the area around this temple, this shrine, and he was bit by a scorpion as a young boy, and attributed his survival of that to Guadalupe. So he actually was pretty fond of her as well, because he considers to have saved his life. Cortez, when he came to the New World, he, as part of his banner that served as the unofficial flag of the Spaniards, had an image of Guadalupe on it. Okay, so this apparition is starting to look rather shady, right? It's starting to look like, well, oh, we have this prior image that's being brought over consciously by the Spaniards, all right? And I think there's very little coincidence here. I think it's very calculated. This image that's been described on this banner was basically described as a beautiful image of a Virgin Mary wearing gold crown and surrounded by 12 gold stars. She has her hands together in prayer, asking her son to give her strength to the Spaniards so that they might conquer the heathens and Christianize them, is what a historian described as this banner. So, and also, King and Queen of Spain by this time had declared Guadalupe the protector of the Indians. So already we have Guadalupe very much associated with the New World and the conquest, and the dark skin of the statue being very much associated with the dark skin of the natives that they're meeting. Okay. So the Spaniards come, they do their conquest, they have a fairly easy time, it turns out, because of the mythology of the Aztecs. Quetzalcoatl was their main god, and he was supposed to have returned at some point, and it was not too hard to convince them that the Spaniards were Quetzalcoatl for a while. And so they actually didn't fight as they would have if they didn't have this myth. There was another legend and another goddess, Tonantzin, who was kind of the mother goddess, Mother Earth goddess, and I think the Spaniards figured out that this is kind of a good point to maybe twist that goddess to their own needs. And so what they did is there was a particular place, a hill called Tepeyac, that where Tonantzin had a shrine, and they in a fairly calculated way replaced the idol there with their own image of Guadalupe. That particular one didn't take, as it turns out. There was a lot of fighting and a lot of frustration that the Spaniards were destroying the old gods and the old ways, and that I think they had put up a picture or an image of Our Lady of Remedy, which is another image of Mary, another graven image. So they got the idea of this tilma, or they got this, they created a new image that was actually painted by a local artist by the name of Marcos Zipactli. These novel names are tongue twisters for sure. Okay, so this artist actually borrowed this image from the banner, removed the stars and left the crown, as it turns out, and painted this thing, and then they put this up, and later on they cooked up this story that this was a miraculous thing. In fact, this story didn't show up for about 100 years later. So we have the image kind of being associated with this god, and the fact that the image, they did a few things to more associate it with the god that was there, and so they in effect convinced the Aztecs that the old gods were still alive, and that they were just sort of transmorgifying into these new gods, and that Guadalupe was really Tonantzin. It was really the same thing. So that was kind of an easier pill to swallow at that point. All of this this destruction of the Aztec culture occurred under this bishop by the name of Juan de Zumarraga, who was a proud student of the Inquisition. This was the same bishop, by the way, who Juan Diego went and supposedly had visited, but unfortunately he was in Spain at the time, so they have a little problem with their story there. This guy actually was kind of oversaw the destruction of the Aztec culture, the libraries, and a lot of the monuments and things that they had built. There is nothing positively known about Juan Diego, although there are many stories, which is really strange. There's no bones of Juan Diego or any real thing, but they have these very detailed accounts of this discussion with Juan Diego and Guadalupe in his visions. So let's see. An examination by scientists in 1982 concluded that the image was hand painted, and later some three Vatican priests actually wrote a letter to the popes, sort of encouraging him not to beatify, which is a step prior to canonization of Juan Diego, because they didn't believe it. They basically thought that this was a hoax, and that they didn't want it to go any further. And these so
that was the actual.
These were actually
the actual
priests that
shroud,
or these were priests that were actually involved in the handling of the tilma and kind of keeping it and such. So they were actually very close to it.
So they say that it's actually, so they kind of agree that this looks like a hand painting. It's probably not miraculous.
Right.
So, okay. All right.
Right. And there was a main supporting document of the story, and that was later found to be a forgery. So the whole thing is kind of falling apart. But there's this wonderful quote by Joseph Goebbels, who is Hitler's administrator of propaganda, who basically said, "A lie repeated often enough and forcefully enough gains the legitimacy of truth." And he had this notion of a big lie, that the bigger the lie, the more absurd and the more reinforcement you have, the easier it is to sell it. So we have that same thing going on here. We have quite a bit of embellishment going on of this basic story that I've already told you. We have this notion that Guadalupe is actually a bastardization or a translation, if you will, of a nautical word, Quetzalcoatl. I'm probably mispronouncing it. Which there's a nautical word, which is the native Aztec language, that basically means crushing the serpent, which is very interesting. Very interesting because. We have a picture. We have in an image. We have her standing on a serpent, and that's significant because Quetzalcoatl, their main god, was a serpent god. So here we have her, Guadalupe.
Yeah. It sounds like
this.
It's got
right.
the image of crushing the old god.
Right.
Huh.
And actually, this half moon on the bottom is symbolic throughout Europe as conquering the pagan beliefs.
Okay.
It's a symbol of the triumphs of Christianity over pagan beliefs. There's another embellishment that they did, and that is supposedly they have this big holy thing that if you take a look at the right eye of the Guadalupe image and you magnify it so much that you can see that it's basically a photographic imprint of what she was seeing at the time that this imprint was made. So it's kind of giving you the idea that it's a photograph, and they have various so-called scientific experts verifying this. But it turns out these scientific experts are ophthalmologists, Okay, now what do ophthalmologists do for a living? They look for eye diseases, and they look for problems in the eye. So they have nothing. No, they know nothing as a rule about art or digital imaging or that sort of thing. So that's what passes as scientific experts.
Wow.
And I would claim that this is very much like we claim to see the man in the moon, and that's because we are very, very well wired for looking for faces and looking for things. And there's lots of conflicting stories about what's in this photograph, this supposed photograph. Okay, there's another fuss being made about how this cactus fiber cloth, which is supposed to be, rather primitive sort of cloth, has held up so many years. And it turns out that this cloth is actually made of palm fiber. It's something else entirely that does last quite a bit longer. We have Juan Diego, who in his alleged, the Catholic Church did a lot of so-called research to shore up their story for the canonization. And they have this, in this biography of him, they had him spending literally 10 hours a day walking back and forth between his home and the church where he went and visited. So they have him so devout that he spends all of his time walking back and forth to the church. So that's kind of, although he's supposedly a farmer, weaver, or laborer, and he has him walking, but then they also discovered that he had been previously a former Aztec military commander. So out of the blue, they decided, well, he was a former Aztec and he was son of a king and all this. So anyway, so this thing just gets bigger and bigger, and the Catholic Church has definitely associated themselves with it by canonizing Juan Diego. They have said that this is something that passes our test for being a miracle, and we stand by it, and the Catholic Church certainly makes a lot of money from this myth. Now I'm going to ask a few questions, I think, to our audience, or a few questions, I think, to believers of this, and then we'll open the phone for questions. Maybe what we can do while I'm doing that is we can put up the phone number for our call-in show. We're live today. What is today?
Yeah, we are live. It is May 2nd right now.
Okay.
We'll be getting the callers in a little bit, and here's the topic that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. So here are my questions. How can you trust a church that is promoting such an obvious myth? Okay, it's very simple. How can you trust someone who's obviously lying to you? And how can you accept the moral principles from a church that they themselves don't follow? So they're claiming this high moral ground of thou shalt not lie, thou shalt not bear false witness. But here we have, a definite case of this happening. This thing is kind of a very big snowballing thing. And I think the message that their tacit approval of this myth says is Christianity has so little value on its own that it must be promoted through lies and cultural destruction. And that's I think the message that this sends is that you have to lie in order to believe in Christianity.
Okay.
And I'm sure we'll have some viewers that will think that's a controversial statement.
Just a little.
And we might have some viewers that say, well, I'm a Protestant and these Catholics make up all this stuff, and that's their problem, and I don't buy it. I think that if you're a Protestant and you see the Catholic Church making up these myths, you should be complaining just as loud as I am. So by their silence, I would claim that the Protestants agree with this assertion that Christianity needs lies in order to support itself. So with that, I think we have some callers. We're getting them screened by our guys. Anyway.
So just to kind of recap here, make
sure
I've
presented a lot of stuff.
Yeah, quite a few things here, just to make sure that I've got it straight in my head.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, what we're talking about is Lady of Guadalupe was an original painting that was done, I think in there, it was found or at least discovered around the 1300s.
Yeah, it was actually a statue.
Okay, it was a statue.
Yes, and it became a source of iconography, a source of images that...
Exactly. It was very popular. It was very powerful.
Right.
To a lot of influential people at that time.
That's right.
These influential people are the ones who went on to, or at least some of them, to have a hand in discovering and bringing over people to the New World.
That's right.
Mexico, South America, North America, that type of thing.
And bringing Catholicism to the New World.
Exactly.
Now, remember that Spain didn't have any sort of notion of separation of church and state. So the church and the state were basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And they more or less got a decree from the Pope, go for it. You know, we want more Christians.
Okay, so they had this original image who influenced those people. Those people then went over to the New World. Mm-hmm. And then this Marcos Zapatla, or sorry, I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, it's just the name was
Zapatli.
Redid the image.
Right. In fact,
essentially.
Yes. Yeah. He actually painted the original one, and it's actually been retouched and
did he paint that original one?
He painted the original one.
Oh, okay.
And the image has been retouched and added to. One source I read actually said that they actually did away with one image completely. Did away with the whole thing and redid it.
Okay.
And at that point, they forgot to put the crown on.
Okay.
At that point, and the Catholic Church claimed it was a miracle that the crown had disappeared from this image.
Okay, so this new one is a bit more in line with some of the gods of the Aztecs and whatever, to kind of convince them that, here's our god, and wow, it looks fairly similar to yours, doesn't it?
Well, no, these changes actually occurred afterwards, long afterwards. So these changes occurred in the 1700s and 1800s. So,
all right. So essentially they have this Lady of Guadalupe image, and then Juan Diego comes along, supposedly, assuming that there's an actual person.
Right.
Comes along. He has a vision of her, says he met her, goes back to the church says, bollocks. He goes out, and the Virgin Mary grows some roses in the middle of the winter.
That's right.
He collects them all, puts them in his coat, goes back to church, flashes them.
Right.
The roses fall out, and on his coat they have this image painted.
Right.
The Virgin Mary comes along, basically. And imprints herself on his coat.
Yes, beautiful story, isn't it? I'm actually really enjoying the story and the mythology surrounding it. Although I don't believe any of it, I think it's wonderful stuff, but I don't buy it. So I don't buy it as real. So I'm actually enjoyed doing some research on this. So yes, you have it right. And
also one other question I did have though. This is the Lady of Guadalupe. You had said that the name Guadalupe is very similar to one of the Aztec, Quetzalcoatl or something like that.
That's just a phrase that means one who crushes the serpent. It's not a god.
So is Lady of Guadalupe, was that wording attached to it prior to them coming to?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so Guadalupe was there before.
Guadalupe actually refers to a river in Spain.
Okay, so is it just a coincidence that Guadalupe is similar to this other language?
I think it is. I think it's one of those interesting coincidences. So I'll give them that coincidence. Let's put it that way.
Okay, all right.
I buy that that's a coincidence.
Okay, all right.
I don't buy that the river was named because of this apparition that was going to occur in the New World
300 years later.
Right,
yeah,
right.
200 years later.
I don't buy that. So
okay, all right. Okay.
We have a little gap here. I have another little image that's kind of interesting. We have the Virgin Mary appearing all sorts of places, especially in the Americas here. Here we have an appearance of the Virgin Mary. It's a little hard to see. What we're seeing is an office building. This cross is added later, so that's not relevant to what I'm showing you. But we have this sort of hood-like feature here on the windows of this office building in Florida, and a lot of people think that this looks a lot like Guadalupe. This looks very much like her, and it turns out this has become kind of a little phenomenon. There are a lot of people that go to this place and worship and pray and such, and you can see that this is like a normal office building. This is not a church, but all of a sudden we have chairs here for people to come and sit, and we have the cross and such, and for this particular one, the people won't tell you that this is an image that is formed by thin film diffraction, where you get like an oily substance on water, and it will reflect certain light, and so it'll give you these sort of funny colors. And they won't also tell you that there used to be a tree there that had a
sprinkler system.
Well, no. I think just the rain and such from the second story coming down on this tree and then pouring on the windows created the image. And the tree isn't there anymore. The tree's gone. But they won't tell you that there was a tree there, and that's kind of gives you kind of the plausible way of how that image might have come up.
I'm not too sure exactly which one it is, but there was an atheist conference down in Florida about a year ago, I think, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I know our own Michelle from the ACA went down there also.
Right.
And her and...
Yeah, the group did a little field trip, and they actually had James Randi along.
James Randi, exactly. They all went out to this building, and they did see this. And it was really funny because they walked around a church or something has bought the building, and they have like a gift shop inside and stuff like that where you can buy images and keychains of this.
That's right.
But they said that they took a walk around the rest of the building, and they've got plants and shrubs and everything there, and sprinklers and such. And so when you look around the building, you see lots of areas where they got the same kind of patterning on it. Of just weird marks and stuff like that because of oils and whatnot, and they found like a Buddha on one side and stuff like that. So,
and he's just not getting enough
exactly
marketing, I guess.
but yeah, I mean the fact is that when you're talking about a hooded figure of this, anything can form that kind of an image.
Right.
I mean that's something that's so basic that anything that comes along is likely to form something like that.